So Kathleen, quick introduction and tell us about, and please tell us a little bit about Vimeo because people may not be fully up to date on
Yeah,
Vimeo.
for sure. So I'm Kathleen Barrett. I'm the SVP of the enterprise business here at Vimeo, and I run our creator success teams as well. To your point, I think a lot of people think of us still as an alternative to YouTube, which is really not where our focus is. We're really focused on creating tools for video creators. And that means really everyone from the filmmaker through small business, all the way up to enterprises that are using video to communicate with their employees. And to give you a sense of those tools, really it's everything now from a tool that helps you create a video to ways to collaborate and review content, all the way to distribution, which is kind of what we'll talk about today. We have some live streaming technology, which has become quite popular in the current environment. And on our OTT side of the business here, it's the ability to run a Netflix-like experience that's fully branded by the creator's brand, but distributed across 8 different platforms and really reaching your customers everywhere they are and allowing you to monetize that. And so, customers hungry for a really high quality experience, putting that technology at the fingertips of really anybody that is a content creator or licensor or curator. So really excited to talk about how we can help.
And you're looking out, you mentioned it briefly here, the enterprise side, and I imagine just lots of enterprises just must be calling you guys up and looking for all of these different types of ways. Sort of the next level of content, to brands as content developers and both internal and external. Yeah.
Yes, I think we talked a little bit about accelerated adoption, and I think everybody is looking for a solution right now when we're trying to navigate this new environment.
Indeed. And Erik, thanks for joining us. And I think we all know Hyundai, so you probably don't have to explain to us what Hyundai is, but tell us a little bit about your role there and what you look after, and then we'll move on.
Awesome. I'm Erik Thomas. I'm super thankful to be here. And now a big fan of Kathleen and the team here, but also a big fan of Damien and Outfest group. At Hyundai, I lead the experiential sponsorship and now multicultural group for AA and Hispanic. And so for experiential, that means anytime our brand or our products or services engage with consumers or the public outside of a dealer, it's probably something that we did. And I'm very recently excited that we're also putting a few more efforts into our AA and Hispanic efforts in the US, and I'm championing that for our organization.
That's great. Thanks for that. So Kathleen and Erik, we're going to jump back to you in just a second, but I do want to talk with Damien here just a bit about, appreciate the historical background of Outfest, Damien, but let's talk about this particular event. Maybe talk about the history of this specific event that's coming up, which I think we safely maybe call your signature event. And then take us through, Damien, when the conversation started about, oh boy, I don't think we're going to be having an in-person event, and a little bit through that decision-making process to go sort of all digital and virtual. But talk to us about this event first and what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So Outfest Los Angeles, again, has been around for decades and has slowly evolved. I think it was renamed sometime in the early 90s. Don't hold me to that. Yeah. To Outfest and Outfest Los Angeles. And every year we show typically over a couple hundred films in multiple categories. We have centerpiece films, we have our platinum series, we have special event days like All Girls Friday and boys shorts that everybody always looks forward to. And of course, a number of parties throughout the event. We have a breakfast series for our filmmakers and alumni that are of the program. And tens of thousands come out every year and build their vacations around this. And our membership program and the benefits around our membership program are very much tied to the value of this particular experience in this event. So much like all of the big names, South by, TIFF, we are now the largest. That is in particular the largest film festival of its kind in the Southern California, Los Angeles region. So that comes with a lot of responsibility, and we were already in the midst of evolving this. We also have an amazing POC film festival called Outfest Fusion that Hyundai has also been very much a part of. That is a different format, and has been an incredible partner and sponsor with that. We do a 1-minute film contest, and I don't want to say that because sometimes Outfest Fusion gets swallowed up by Outfest Los Angeles, but both are kind of perfect bookmarks into these kind of film festival experiences. And that will be the next one that we obviously have to really understand how that is more meaningful and evolves within the digital experience. So spending 20 years as a media and tech executive and entrepreneur and working with major, world-class brands, entertainment studios, you start to realize pretty quickly that there's, I even remember when we moved away from DVDs and got into streaming and seeing all the distinct business units at a studio struggling to follow a property as it moved through.
Right.
Similar to us, I've really tried to capture, live events and live experiences, whether they're drive-ins or whether they are, socially distanced parks. There's still an amazing, important element that ties everything together.
Right.
And digital, even back then, if you went to a Dodger game or, we were with State Farm and we were doing some sort of unique experience experientially, the technology and the digital was always there. And as we know, content marketing and entertainment are now being delivered digitally everywhere. So consumption habits in the phone have transformed how people experience things. And even when you go to South by or go to CES or any of these kind of industry conferences, you're interfacing with your app, you're creating your schedule. So it isn't unknown. It was just the final step that we kind of had to understand. What does this mean for a space in which the physical content now is being digested in a different way?
Yeah.
So for Outfest, we are very mission driven, and this came from a very different place of just not only survival as a business because of profits and margins, but more importantly is because we have a unique opportunity to create more access, to be more inclusive, more visibility, build more opportunities that we regionally have been restricted to.
Yep.
And those types of major breakthroughs and leapfrogs forward don't typically happen unless there is some sort of either mash cash infusion, which you don't typically see in the nonprofit spaces, or because of something like this,
Right.
an external factor, whether it's environmental or in our case, a pandemic, that ultimately forces an organization to really take a strong look at itself. First, identifying our mission and our programs still in a place that is needed. And if so, how do we take this and really try and turn it into an opportunity?
And a follow-up to that. So Damien, when you made the decision, okay, we definitely going to go digital virtual, you greenlit that. And then in those coming sort of weeks, as it started to come together and you thought about it, were there one or two things that you really wanted to accomplish, even though you knew digital is not going to be the same as an in-person experience, but you still wanted to do what? Either for the content partners that you have and the films, and of course, the audience and the attendees. Did a couple of things bubble to the top with, like, no matter how tough digital may be, we still want to focus on executing this?
Absolutely. And just to clarify, when I came on board day one, we had a strategic plan, which clearly my skill sets and experiences matched, which was to take us digital and to use digital, to integrate digital in a way that did expand our footprint, that
Right.
did build larger audiences. We called it the Outfest Always On internally program. What would Outfest look 65 days a year?
Right.
It's the reason we launched a podcast recently. It's a reason that we are working with media partners and brand partners in completely new ways around experiences and activations. Some might seem, does that feel like a nonprofit? Well, we all know that, corporate social responsibility programs, employee programs, and partners are doing that on their own. So I think
Right.
it's up to the nonprofits to step into a space and say, listen, we are the experts in this field. We actually know what the community wants, how to reach them. Let us work together collectively. So I think the first part of me was looking at the audience and what those audience needs are. The second part was looking at our filmmakers. There's a lot of compromises that have to be made when you're moving to digital. So the second thing that when I knew this was going to be accelerated is we had to make sure the filmmakers felt comfortable. And made sure that whether it was their unions or whether it was many of the rules around festivals being purchased, bought, or exhibited had to be met. And then you have to go around accessibility and making sure that from a price perspective, you have options.
Right.
We have a financial assistance form that you can fill out. We don't have to give too many details, and we'll provide an all access pass for you. That was critical. We have bundle packages at the next tier up. So those were the important aspects. And then the two biggest ones, of course, is what is the platform? Who is the technology partner?
Right.
And how quickly, because we've all been there. Vetting usually takes years, especially if you're doing anything by committee. You've got IT, you've got this, you've got to look at all the platforms, bring them in for deal, the broker day. You know how it works. And then the other critical side of this was our brand partners and those that have been with us for many, many years. And that's when, connecting if we could have the option. And at this point, we knew drive-ins were out there, but they're not the most economically friendly. So we knew we were going to have support. And going back to those partners and saying, listen, this is what we're thinking. Would you come on board and come on this journey with us? And I think you see the two of those partners represented here today.
That's great. No, thank you for that. So let's bring Erik and Kathleen back in. And Erik, I'm just going to start with you. And before we sort of jump into the relationship, you had talked in our prep call, and I thought it'd be a great idea for you to share, some of those brand tenets for Hyundai. And regardless of whether it's analog, gone to digital, integrated in the future, you still are looking for certain things for that brand, right? In terms of deliverables and KPIs and the value that you're always going to look for as the Hyundai brand is out there. So maybe talk a little bit about your framework in terms of how, when you judge, whether Hyundai should get involved in any opportunity that it might be, and financial support or whatever, and what you're looking for on behalf of the brand. Let's start there.
So this is a little bit more detailed question than it was yesterday. So I want to tell you, there is a heavy thought process that we engage in with our partners. So in this case in particular, it's Advantage International, which is our advertising, our experiential AOR. And we do a very thorough look at what are our goals. So we know that our brand would say better drives us. And it's all about giving a better experience to those consumers. And there's, of course, key tenets that we want to convey about the product itself. And we want to respect people's time and give them valuable time experiences with us.
Right.
But all that, we look at okay, then what are the product offerings and who is that targeting? And then we start looking at the different avenues that we can connect with people. LGBTQ is definitely one of them. And Outfest is one of those that aligns with kind of our target areas. And so then we set out to make sure that we can engage with their audience, or we're looking, especially in this year, to make sure that they can continue to connect with their audience, and that provides a platform for us to kind of reconfirm our support for the organization and those people that are going to that event or patronizing that, whatever it might be.
Right. That's great. And then in terms of the relationship here with Outfest, and thinking about the different consumer experiences that maybe you've had in the past, and maybe there's a car on site and people can see the car, and there's branded experiences sort of everywhere in a physical analog environment. How did you think about, and maybe tell us a little bit about the components of your particular partnership with Outfest in the digital and virtual world? And if you've done anything digital virtual sort of in the last 6 months where you can also share some learnings, that would be great in terms of what's been working as far as digital engagement when you're used to analog engagement.
Well, I want to just sort of start by echoing what Damien said earlier. So I think it's a myth that the public engages with us in the way our marketing channels exist, right? I work in experiential only, so that's how people want to engage with your product or brand, right? No, everything has to be 360. People consume the way they consume, and sometimes it's in person, sometimes it's on the phone, sometimes it's on their computer or laptop or on traditional media, or it's all of the above. And so you have to provide an answer or provide a means by which you can engage with them on their terms. And so in that sense, yes, we've been combining a 360 holistic approach to kind of these endeavors for a long time. And I would say that when we're doing it best, it does take into all those different accounts. We're engaging with our whole marketing arm, our whole effort, as well as our PR effort, right? And promoting it, making folks aware, and then following up with some sort of CRM kind of acknowledgement of engagement and continuing a dialogue. And I'm not being as articulate as I'd like, but suffice it to say, it is a holistic approach at all times. It has to be.
And with this particular relationship, and even other digital relationships that might be recent or coming, what are you going to be looking for as far as the KPIs? I mean, is it, obviously, are you measuring some sort of brand impact? Are there any calls to action mixed into your partnership? But what are your KPIs, and how are you going to look back on this and say, was this successful?
Without going into all the details, I would just say that definitely there are KPIs. And for us this year, we're all about the brand building. People do, to your point earlier, know our nameplate, but or know the Hyundai brand, but they may not know our nameplates. They may not be aware of all the different technology that we have out there. We lead in many ways that we don't get credit for, or people aren't connecting with us, from our fuel cell vehicle that we create to our fleet of all fuel and electrified vehicles to that which is coming, and what's on the market now. So it's really just finding that opportunity to engage with people. And some people look for that. One of the things we found, actually, it's very interesting with Outfest, with the audience, they crave our alt fuel story and they want to see that product, and they love that we offer that and love that that aligns with Outfest. Ironically enough, when we start looking at what people purchase, they know us for our enthusiast brand, our in brand, our performance brand, and that's what they're buying. So I haven't quite figured that out. I haven't quite figured out what people say versus what they buy.
Right.
But what does work is that I know that they're acknowledging our brand in a positive way.
And is that something you recommend other marketers as well, instead of sort of say looking, hey, let's market Hyundai, the broader brand, that let's either, you know, market the green side or the performance side, or maybe I market a specific product within the portfolio? Do you find that that's a little easier to execute on because it's very specific and the KPI might be more specific, or are you also looking for some brand halo benefits as well in terms of the main brand?
Yes to all of that.
Yeah.
But I would say it is really the brand specific. People know their brands and know what they want to accomplish.
Right.
We certainly have things that we want to communicate. We have new product launches, and Outfest aligns with kind of those messages that we want to get out there. But we would look to any of our events and engagements that we're doing to make sure that they align in that same respect. And individual stories matter, but so does making sure that there's a way to have a conversation about the whole product line.
Right.
We are a mass brand that offers everything from the small entry-level product to the best SUV in the market. So, and in between. So we want to make sure that we have a way to have that dialogue with anyone and everyone.
That's great. Kathleen, thanks for waiting patiently. I'm an old agency hound, so I could grill Erik forever on this kind of stuff. But tell us about, you know, obviously with being the partner, and you probably call yourself, and maybe it's the streaming partner, and that makes a lot of sense. We know what that component is, but tell us about the breadth of the relationship with Outfest beyond just being, you know, quote unquote, the streaming partner. I mean, what does that mean? And did you also bring some, you know, proactively bring some ideas to the table? Because you've probably had some experience in terms of more digital, virtual types of consumer experiences with your partners and clients. And just tell us a little bit about the relationship and what you're actually doing for Outfest in this capacity.
Absolutely. So I've been with this product since 2012 when we launched it, and it was acquired by Vimeo in 2016. So it's a bit of my my baby, actually. So we come with a lot of perspective, I think, because of that, right? You know, the vision way back in the day was lower the barriers to entry, make it possible for anyone to launch a channel. It's a turnkey experience, right? You don't need to bring in developers. You don't need to bring in 20 vendors. You don't need $1 million budget. And make it as crisp for the consumer as possible. With that approach, you know, the best thing is the types of creators that we see, but also we're a platform. And so we have over 1,500 channels, right, that are on this platform and on this technology, and millions of end subscribers. And so what we can do with that is learn a lot about what those people are doing, like where do they want to be? How can you optimize for the viewer experience? How are you optimizing for converting people to paid subscribers? And we can do two things with that. We can feed it back into the product, so it's going to perform as well as possible for all of our users, but we can also share those insights, right? We see what people are doing, what's working, what's not. We're kind of at the forefront of all of these changes. And so I think we like to think of ourselves as more than a technology partner, of course, but also giving some of this guidance. And depending on, you know, the partner, thinking here, in this case, the sponsorship component was huge, right? And how can you use this technology that is a platform to fit your needs in this moment with these customers and these brand partners?
Right.
And so I think it was a pretty collaborative effort between the two teams to think about what should this look like, how can we make it successful, and how can we keep helping each other to iterate on it to make sure that you're really achieving the experience you want for all parties that are involved.
That's great. No, thank you for that. And, you know, as we sort of jump into a broader group discussion, the question that just popped up in the chat string sort of goes to a lot of the issues we were going to talk about. So let me take this question and I'll read it out to you, even though you have it all in front of you. I'd love to hear how long it took you to strategize on the back end. And this is for all of you, as you all started to talk, how you evaluated different case studies and ways to partner, and any thoughts on sort of this project design management phase in advance, and when did you all get together? How did this start? Obviously, in this particular case, you probably didn't have as much time as you would all like to plan something. We were all thrown into this fire, and we're doing the same thing here at CDX and Economy, of course. So anyone jump in and take that, and let's get a little group discussion going on this.
Well, I can jump in a little bit. I mean, the
Please,
first thing that I think also that's so important here as we talk about KPIs and we talk about the quantitative nature of what we do, obviously, for an organization to survive, you know, whether it's coming from corporate partnerships, government foundations, anytime we go to spend something significantly, we have a board, we have a budget, and that had to change mid-year. So just to turn, I mean, we hear about this so much from different nonprofits, to turn a ship so quickly, it really was going to take a collective effort. And it also qualitatively, when we think about brands and partners and technology partners, they also have to align with our mission, and that they themselves are also doing the good, if you can.
Right.
And Vimeo and Hyundai, I identically say, confidently say that was something that before we took those leaps, and all of a sudden budgets start to be shifted, we had to really ask ourselves. It's a very short list when you look at technology platforms and you look at brand partners in these days who have been doing it right and have been doing the good work. And so that was part one, is we don't get to just go out to everybody, you know,
right.
and throw it out there. And it had to happen very, very quickly, that we had to have budgets, we had to have an understanding of what teams we would require. One of the things that with Vimeo was so critical was to really understand the support we would receive, and the options we would have, and that this could be iterative. And so it came down to, like, even if you're growing a subscription type product, we really had to understand, how does that tie into membership? So there was layers here that had to be worked through really quickly. And then on the Hyundai side too, because I'm a former agency guy, I think through those things. You know, we did an incredible Out for Greatness series with them the last festival. We've been developing content with them, original content. We've been working with influencers and those voices in the space.
Yeah.
We've gone through the hard knocks of what, you know, where do the cars go, and how do we make this organic, and how does the, you know, the messaging, what's the follow-up, what's the surveys, like all of those conversations had to happen at critical speed, and get those proposals out, because everybody was just kind of like chickens with their heads off, you know, running around going, what do we do at this moment? What we know we can't allow, again, is a year in which these stories disappear.
Yeah.
A year in which, you know, for many of these filmmakers and for many of the storytellers, this is their life. This is what they put their time into. So that was what I think had Vimeo and Hyundai and ourselves crunching the numbers and making sure that this made sense for all of our businesses, because we all have different people that we report to, and get to a place where we can make a major decision quickly. And I can tell you that both partners not only passed with flying colors on ours, but I hope we did as well, of getting everybody what we need. And again, coming to those places.
That's great. Erik or Kathleen, want to jump in on that at all? I know I was thrown into the fire by, you know, you all were into this, but maybe having learned and gone through this process in a relatively quick way and thrown into the fire, and now looking ahead at future engagements that might be digital or virtual only, like what bubbled to the top in regards to the areas of focus to really move it along, and from the planning point of view? Any recommendations for event planners out there who may be shifting to digital or and maybe Damien's listening?
I want to ask all the questions at one time.
I know. Put you on the spot. Yeah.
I can jump in on one, which is, you know, we've been, like I mentioned, we've been doing this for a very long time, but probably for a different user. And film festivals is a great example where we, it didn't always make sense to people, right? They really valued the in-person experience, and then suddenly that was just torn away from everybody. And so it was a scramble for a lot of people. I think you always want a partner that's kind of been there and can help you on the pieces that you don't need to reinvent, right? If they had to go build a tech team and do 100 other things, like, how are you going to manage all of this at once? And so that's kind of our approach, is let us do this piece. You focus on content and your customers. You know that much better than we do. And so let us do this work. And I think, it's been this really quick adoption for a lot of brick and mortar experiences and in-person experiences, everything from cultural institutions to these film festivals, even, fitness studios that just don't know what to do. And we think that's here to stay. And so the work now is, let's get you up quickly, let's get you up and running, let's get this launched so you don't miss this year, you don't miss this month. And I think as we think about partnering more deeply with all of these folks, it's how do you make this a complementary part of your experience forever? And how does it more elegantly marry into all the work you've done and all the customers you have, so that it does feel really kind of in sync and like a holistic experience for anybody that's a fan or a customer.
Right. Yeah.
I think, for us, it's very interesting because the first instincts was start to pull back to try to figure out, like, if you can't safely go forward, not just for the consumer, but for anybody who's setting up your brand, anybody who's engaging and putting it on, then you take a pause, and we did that. And then in the process, I think summer hit and everybody was starved for anything and something. And so we started to look at those tried and true things that really do work for us still, Outfest being one of them, and it still made sense. And so then the challenge was, well, how do we continue to tell our story? Certainly part of that is realized through the drive-in experience, still allowing us to engage with people on some level directly, but also continuing to tell those digital stories, continuing to push that digital platform. I think some interesting learnings in this process have been, outside of this, we're doing a lot of this right now, right? And everybody is it's a learning process. That which I know today, similar to sort of COVID learnings, are going to be much different in 4 months. Hopefully I'll be an expert in 4 months. But for right now, I'm doing an event for our dealers in North America, so 9,500 people, and trying to figure out, like, how much bandwidth you need. What does it look like on the end user side? Our event is next month, by the way. So suddenly we weren't doing anything, and now we're doing this and trying to accomplish the same thing that we would if we pulled these people in person, but on a digital level is way different. And so to Kathleen's point, looking for an expert that you can partner with that can take on some of that for you, but also everybody collectively thinking, like, well, if Outfest is doing something digitally right now, and then Hyundai's doing something, and then Vimeo's got something, and then CDX has got something going, and then the next one, what just happened? Does that work? And if you're like me, I'm experiencing, like, all the kids went back to school this week. What just happened to my Wi-Fi? So those are things that shape your experience and shape people's perception. So we're having those dialogues now, and then challenging those that we work with, i.e. Damien.
Right. And look, I mean, we talked about the B2B side of this too, right? And we're going through this right now, right? And anyone who's like in our business is going through this. And I'll open this up to all of you through this experience or other experiences in the more digital virtual realm. The one thing we're of course struggling with, and I had done 102 straight digital conferences that had no digital component whatsoever, right? And now it's like, but I need to recreate the lobby experience, right? In terms of networking at my events, or how do you recreate that in-person, more personal, whether it's kind of networking, anything, any early thoughts on what's been working in terms of, replacing the more human person-to-person experience and replicating that in a digital environment, whether it's avatars or whether, it could be anything. I don't care what the idea is or how crazy it is or silly it may seem. Is there anything that's been working or any recommendations to recreating that lobby or that networking or that one-on-one or personal experience in a virtual world?
Yeah, I was going to say, Damien was actually part of our virtual event because NAB got canceled, and suddenly what were we going to do? And how were we going to talk to these customers? And so we similarly were scrambling, and there wasn't really a playbook for virtual events. We're lucky that we have a lot of the technology that facilitated our ability to do that. But it was a huge lift, right? And I think it was a beautiful experience. And what we ended up doing was pairing a full day kind of live stream with amazing guests that were sharing tremendous insights. Right now, people want guidance, right? They want to hear that it's hard for other people too. They want to hear that they figured out a way. And so that was in our live streaming experience. And then we paired that with actually a Slack channel that was dedicated to all the attendees.
Yeah.
And then even now we're doing, you know, Ask Me Anythings with folks that were in the panels, and people are just so hungry for that conversation. And I think it's been really impactful and amazing to see. Actually, I think maybe even more amazing than some in-person networking, where the people that are actually collaborating and having these conversations in the room, like you would have paid to see that. They're
Right.
leaders in the industry, and they're all kind of pitching in and helping each other. And then that's helped us inform kind of follow-on webinars too, where again, we're just trying to teach more, trying to make this easier. It's a lot to tackle. And so that information sharing has been really incredible for us.
Erik or Damien, yeah, either of you on this, on recreating that personal experience.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Either of you, or you or Damien, Erik, on sort of this recreating this personal experience in a virtual setting.
I think looking at what that offers, it really, where much of the digital right now is still one to many. It's really taking stock of the personal experience, or as we're calling it, that lobby experience is one that offers the personal, right?
Yeah.
And so it's everything from including folks in part of the process. So the user, the end user, the end recipient, or the person who's watching, being included. We have moments where we're including that in the whole digital experience. It's not something that can be given to everyone,
right.
But finding as many opportunities to do that for a lot more people is important, right?
Yeah.
So they do have that one-to-one exchange, and or doing separate breakouts or separate timings for that, which is part of a larger.
Right,
So
and Damien, in terms of how have you sort of, maybe like VIPs getting sort of access? I mean, I'm sure you explored all sorts of ideas in terms of, you know, how do we recreate that more personal human to human experience in a virtual world? Any advice, or are you guys doing anything specific this time around?
We have some amazing case studies from the summer, and when you talk about B2B of where our core competencies really, I think, created some really dramatic case studies. The first one was with McKinsey. McKinsey had planned on coming to Outfest this year with their entire team.
Yeah.
They've been doing pride events mostly, but they were going to bring their entire ERG, glam team to Outfest Los Angeles. And when that went away, we didn't want to lose that. So we created a film experience where they got to watch 2 short films, 2 women of color directors that did a Q&A just for the ERG teams. People channeled in from thousands of miles away internationally just to get up and experience this live. So they all got to watch the shorts, and then we'd come back, we'd have a discussion with the filmmakers, and it was incredible. And in fact, that spawned one of the programs that we're doing around Outfest Los Angeles right now is a community corporate partner program in which those ERG groups and diversity and inclusion groups who have been struggling to find ways to connect with one another are connecting through film. And so that's a beautiful, beautiful thing to see. And then it's also great for our filmmakers who may be looking for investments in their films and
right, sure,
visibility. They suddenly have access to groups of individuals, corporate executives, on all the way down to interns who are also interfacing and exploring and experiencing things together. So that's something that we just didn't anticipate was going to be such a big deal. And then the publishing partnerships too that we're doing, I think, with ARP, with the Hollywood Reporter, again, extending ourselves into those membership organizations who are also looking to connect with shared film experiences. And that's another thing that we experimented with, just to see if the value was there for both the audience as well as for the partner themselves.
That's great. And bringing up sort of the publishing partners, sort of, you know, where are we, you know, Damien, maybe I'll start with you. And again, anyone wants to jump in here in terms of the opportunity to amplify. Now we have things like Facebook Live, right? And you have Vimeo in its current form. You have all these great distribution sort of platforms. So, you know, Damien, I'll start with you, but Erik and Kathleen, in terms of just, you know, recommendations and experiences with other, you know, types of distribution and amplification platforms. I mean, Damien, are you doing this like on a Facebook Live as well, or like, you know, talk to us about that landscape?
So not to plug our Vimeo partner too much, but you know, the one thing about their live stream product is that it does allow you to, you know, synchronize and simulcast to so many different social channels, which is going to be critical, as well as our OTT product, Outfest Now. So, you know, you look ahead and listen, we've used all of them. I mean, we had a really wide breadth early on. You know, we did an incredible, I forget how many people popped in and out for the film Disclosure, which is on Netflix. We did a massive Q&A with all of the the trans talent and that had appeared in that particular film.
That's great.
And that was something that, again, we're seeing numbers like 50 to 60,000 engagement, live viewers channeling in through all these. So I don't think you can just choose one.
Right.
You're forced to be everywhere now.
Right.
And it needs to be seamless, and it has to be accessible, and things can't go wrong. And, so we've really spent some time understanding, how do we get to be everywhere all the time, anytime we do something special for the community, and that we know fans are going to love.
And Erik, I want to hear if you have a thought on this, but I'm going to go to Kathleen just quickly here in regards to Kathleen. Talk to us about that, and Josh, if you're out there, my boss. We've been thinking about Facebook Live, and so you can go to Vimeo, and you can also use you to get across on all of these different types of platforms, right? And because we've been thinking about, hey, should this be on Facebook Live, for example,
or on caveat that
on LinkedIn Live, right?
Since we started Techonomy 9 years ago, we've been on live stream platforms. We've had on Jolly at our events. So we have been a huge fan of live stream, and we do simulcast typically when we use live stream. But to Drew's point, a lot of these types of events we're hosting, we're leveraging the Zoom platform for the collaboration element, but would love to understand sort of all the different opportunities.
Sure. Yeah, we could probably do a really deep dive on the technical components, but from an approach, we strongly believe in ubiquity and being on every platform. We're not a closed platform. Most platforms, even the Facebooks of the world, kind of want to keep you in Facebook, which is fine. It works for their model because we don't monetize through ads and views. We don't have to think that way. And so we think about all these platforms as partners, and we want you to be on all the platforms. So yes, you can basically live stream from one place and then have it simulcast to LinkedIn, have it simulcast to Facebook, because you're going to have different audiences on each of these platforms, and why limit yourself and your reach? So we believe pretty strongly in that, and we've built the tools for that. And then the tools to kind of take a look at what's happening in each of these platforms, who's watching where, should it impact what you send to that platform or your timing. But because video is being so prioritized right now on all of these platforms, particularly live video, it's really important to leverage those tools and be on those platforms and get kind of preferential treatment in whatever algorithms they're leveraging today. And so that's how we build it. And then, on the OTT side, it's owned and operated. And similarly, we want you to be on every device, and we try to make it easy to be on every device. So again, that you are reaching the different demographics that might be preferring to watch in a certain place or on a certain device.
Great. And Erik, have you had any experience? If you haven't, no big deal. And in terms of any of your events that you've been associated with, or direct events, consumer or business to business, where you've said, hey, that it's on Facebook Live, and you think you're getting some branding amplification?
It wasn't necessarily Facebook. Last year we did our event. So there was a deal that was global, and then there was a deal within the US. And so we broadcast our sponsorship at Music Midtown. 2-day festival last summer out of Atlanta. And that was actually on Twitter, and it was fantastic and well received. And it was part of our launch efforts for Sonata, and allowed us to connect with the group that wanted to be at Midtown, but could watch it through kind of our sponsorship efforts. But it's also become, since then, in a way that we didn't anticipate, even more important, because, with auto shows being canceled, we still need to launch product. So in March, we launched the all new Elantra, and we did it on a digital platform, and we wanted it to be everywhere. And you watched it on YouTube, or you watched it on Facebook, or you watched it however you preferred, but you got a chance to see our vehicle, the vehicles come out, if you will. And that only continues until sort of in-person kind of launches can come back.
Right.
We've got new products coming, and I can assure you that the digital launch is ever more important.
That's great. So we just have a few minutes left. So if anyone has another question, please put it in the chat string. I'll try to get to one more. My last question is about money. And Kathleen and Erik, we did not discuss the terms of your partnership, and we won't, and we're not digging for that. And Damien, you can share what you like, but like we are here, the conventional wisdom is that what you're looking for sponsorships for different types of events and things like that, it's harder to get as much in sort of a digital or virtual thing, especially if you have a long running, great physical analog type of an event. So my question isn't, what anybody paid or anything like that. It really is more, you know, knowing what you know and learning what you've learned. Damien, maybe we'll start with you in terms of pricing these things and really trying to still get as much pricing power for the value that you're delivering, even if digital virtual maybe at this stage can't quite deliver as much, but, or maybe it can, maybe, you know, but what did you think about, Damien, when you went to your partners about pricing and trying to get as much as you can and deliver as much as you can for your partners?
Well, I mean, honestly, a lot about pricing comes down to reverse engineering from the consumer and audience experience and the product itself. So what are we creating? You know, we like to think of our future as potentially, you know, Outfest becoming the PBS of our industry. You know, a community-led, holistic way of supporting filmmakers and audiences that love independent film, the series work, all of that content. So as we enter this kind of soft publishing space, we also didn't want to go up against these juggernauts. And so we're very cognizant of where we are in the world and what we want to do. That's why we, you know, some of the things like launching a podcast or producing original content or exhibiting original content that wasn't getting the eyes on YouTube or wasn't finding its way and bringing that under the Outfest Now umbrella was first and foremost, like, what would that vision look like for this new world if we started to take those tracks? Then you kind of have to go back and say, well, what's the value there? You know, are filmmakers still going to want to submit their films if this is the case? All of those different line items in your accounts payable and receivable, you're looking at carefully and saying, whatever we want to get to this, can it be afforded? Can it be afforded by the organization? And then ultimately that cost will pass through in some ways consumers. So we really needed choices. And especially when you're dealing with our particular community and just now the entire world, you know, socioeconomics, accessibility, geography, access to broadband, all of those things come into play when it comes to cost and what you ultimately are providing that end user. And so all of those came back as we got to the numbers and said, you know, this platform has to come in with this space. You know, as a nonprofit, many partners obviously understand that they have special pricing, but even more so, they're very cognizant about what you're actually paying for. And one of the things that you're looking for, again, is partners like Vimeo that are saying, you're not going to need that. That's going to be too much. We can probably get here close enough to what you need here. Right. So the pricing has really worked out, but ultimately it's still terrifying. These are line items that you don't have on your budgets ever. And, you know, and we have new rules like subscriptions that we hope people really find the value at a festival. How you price it and at what point, you know, we're giving away 160 films. Yeah. Which normally, if you went to every single seat at every single theater, would be in the thousands of dollars.
Absolutely.
But $59.99 may still seem high for some, and that's where we had to come up with different products at different levels and make sure that bare bones, this was within our mission, was complementary for those that needed that the most.
That's great.
And so that's a lot where we started.
And Kathleen and Erik, and again, without talking about any specific dollars of this deal or any other deal, what do you recommend, I guess, people that are looking for dollars, right? What do you recommend that they come in with if they want to say, look, even though it's digital or virtual, it's like, we still think there's value here. Kind of, Erik, it goes a little bit back why I asked you about the KPIs, because understanding what your KPIs are makes it a little easier to ask you for money. But any advice in terms from either of you, and we'll close with this, just in terms of the dollars and when you're looking to spend, and even sort of how you're going to be budgeting this in the future, right? You know, can you spread it around to more events with the budget you had, say, previously? And I don't know, but what are your thoughts on the money budgeting part?
Kathleen, do you want to go first?
It's okay, I'm gonna go. I could geek out about pricing forever, so.
What I love about Outfest, and specifically Damien, is they had a vision. They had a vision that they're bringing forward even despite COVID. COVID offered just a minor setback, but they are still continuing at that same plan. They know who they are and they know what they're offering. And that is helpful because then they can come in and say, here's how we're pivoting and here's what we have to offer you.
Right.
It's up to me to know what my brand can do, but because they know at least who they are, it makes it easier to sell. It is especially difficult right now. It is especially difficult. There's no money for a concept that isn't fully baked. There's no money for a concept that can't deliver on the KPIs. And as a partner, Damien inherently in the Outfest team knows kind of what our goals are. And I would say for anybody who's listening, we're all about brand building. And we want to make sure that people connect sort of our nameplates to our brand, and there has to be that experience. There's nothing worse than someone coming in, as you guys might have experienced, saying, hey, tell us who you are so we can tell you what you offer. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
I need to pitch a solid concept or else I don't have time.
Yeah. Kathleen, final word for you on money. Yeah.
Money. Yeah, I mean, I think of it in two very different ways. One is for things like a subscription channel. You know, we think about pricing all day, every day, and we're looking at how do things perform. And someone that might be more comparable to a Netflix needs to consider Netflix's pricing, but you always want to be looking at how's it converting and does that make sense? If it's not converting well, lowering the price. And then we especially, I think the most exciting part about digital distribution is now you go from this local audience to a globally distributed audience. And how do you start thinking about, well, what's purchasing power in these different places? And so we also offer tools, you know, to not only charge in different currencies, but to lower the price in a place where maybe $6.99 doesn't make sense. And so really thinking about who's your audience, where are they, and what are their you know, other options that make this compelling. And then I think what's been very exciting about kind of this direct to consumer approach is people were thinking of it as the only strategy for certain businesses, but really now it's part of a much bigger strategy. And so how do you take that experience and then marry it to more of a B2B partnerships experience? How do you know, part of what we do is we give you, you have access to all the customer information. So like the customers are signing up, they're your customers, not our customers. And so now you can say, well, there's all these opportunities to talk to these people about all these other things they can do and buy.
Right, exactly.
And using that data and that insight as kind of to empower you more broadly in the business.
That's great. Well, I appreciate you all answering that question. It's like, to me, I always hear my mom's in my ear, don't ask people about money, right? So it's like, I'm always nervous about asking people about money. So thank you for taking that question and answering it. So look, thanks to all. Damien, I'm going to give you actually the last word. And when do things get going? Tara, if you're out there, if you can put the website and the code, we have a little discount code for people to buy the tickets. But Damien, tell us when it gets going. Tara will put the information up there and we're all going to look forward to attending Outfest.
Absolutely. So for those of you that are watching live, you've got plenty of leeway. You've got exactly 24 to 48 hours to get in and get ready for it. So right now, Outfest Los Angeles is going to run August 20th through the 30th. That's Thursday until the following weekend. Over the weekends, we have the drive-in experiences out like Calamigos Ranch. We've got over 11 screenings for those to experience. So it's quite the fun part.
Okay.
And then Outfest Los Angeles 2020 will also be, of course, the home of the home. Excuse me, let me back up. Outfestnow.com and going to Outfest LA 2020 is where you can access our apps. So obviously, we are going to be on all of the major platforms. Already are. That you can start to explore the film guide and make your watch list and see what you're going to experience from there. And as I mentioned, there's a couple of different ways to experience. Of course, there's the drive-ins. We have our bundled packages for $20. And of course, the all access pass not only gets you the film festival, but also an entire year of Outfest Now. So we are constantly going to be updating that with different documentaries, feature films, stories, live conversations. We've got Lily Tomlin that's doing a live conversation with us. Sheldunier that's also doing a film from our Legacy collection this year of films that haven't been seen in decades that they were a part of. So there's just going to be a lot to watch.
It's a stellar lineup. It really is a stellar lineup. And we're so glad we could do this with you. We do have the website and the code up in the chat string. So check that out. Look, thanks to everybody. Really appreciate, I know you're all super busy, Damien especially. This is about to start. As an event organizer, I feel you. And have a great rest of the summer. Stay safe and healthy. We'll be back next Wednesday at 3, the CTO of AMD. And Josh, I'll let you take us out. But thanks again, everyone.
Thanks, Drew.